This video is going to be about how to use Prusa Slicer and how to start a print on a Prusa. It's all going to be just about using Prusas. Some of the stuff is true for any 3D printer, but for the team and most uses, I would suggest just using the Prusa. It's the most accurate, has the cleanest results that we have. So yeah, I like Prusas a lot. Okay. So how we start any process is we have to get the piece from Onshape. So here I have just this piece pulled up. It's a pulley with a hub for like a intake roller or something. So we have the piece, same thing, just right click it and then export. And the type you want to export it as is going to be STL. So you want STL, you can name it something. Usually the name of the file is fine. STL and then millimeters the units, and that's all you have to choose here. Again, for options, make sure you're downloading, not storing file and tab. That can confuse some people. Okay, so that's now downloaded, and then we're going to head over to Prusa Slicer. This is the logo for Prusa Slicer. Here we are, and to import, it's pretty easy. Just click this add button. It will automatically open the things on your computer, all your files. You can hit open, and now it's in Prusa Slicer. So the first thing you want to do when you import your parts, let me just import another part as well. So we have two of them. I can show you. Okay. So now we have another part here. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is pick which face you want to put it down on. Right. This is going to be printing from the Z0 from this level right here all the way up. So you want to pick a good face that has a good has lots of contact with the surface, and the face that will also need the least amount of supports usually, because supports just take more time and have less clean results as just not needing to use them. So for this piece, that will probably be this face right here. It's a nice, pretty solid face. There's not too much geometry below it. And compared to this face over here, we don't have these holes that would need supports in them. Or actually probably wouldn't need supports, but if you turn on supports, it would auto-generate supports. Okay. So for this piece, to select the face, you just click the piece. You click this place on face, and then you can just select what face you want, and it'll put that down. And for this piece, the best face I would say would be this face right here. So it's printing like that. So, yeah, so that's how you place them. And then you can do this arrange right here. So the arrange brings them together and organize all the pieces, so you don't have to do it manually. One thing to know is that arrange would not take into account using supports. So usually the support structures intersect each other, and then you can just have to like drag them a little farther apart. As long as you don't drag them too insanely apart, the print times are going to be relatively the same and not super important. Yeah. So now that we have our pieces arranged on the print bed, we can now go and start with the settings. So, well, almost everything you print, you probably want to do 0.2 millimeters speed. This will be the fastest. The 0.2 is the height between each layer. So a bigger height, a larger height will mean less layers, but also a faster print. It's worked fine. I think it's plenty strong. So 0.2 speed will be fastest. Yeah. So that's just like the that's the settings, and those set if I just discard out, those set other settings as the default, and then you change them. So 0.2 speed is great. The filament, this is a funny filament I was on. I was just messing around with TPU and Flex. Anyways, let me just go. Yeah, so the main filament you'll probably use is PLA. It's the most basic one, has the best print results. Pretty strong if you do the right settings, though it's not definitely not the strongest filament, and for some application you're going to want to definitely use another filament. So PLA, I would say, is the default. In this setting here, you can choose generic PLA or Prusa PLA. We have some of both. Generic PLA is probably the best. I don't think it really is. There's not much difference between the two, so it doesn't really matter. But the generic PLA, you put any PLA, it will work. So that's the main filament that we use. The other pretty common one that we have is PTG. I'm not super sure of the different characteristics between PLA and PTG. I think PTG is a little more flexible and a little less brittle than PLA, but I'm not sure. The one for it is a little more difficult to print with, and it might fail more frequently. So that's one little downside. The other filament that I've used is the PCCF, and that's like the really strong one. It's polycarbonate carbon fiber. So you would select this Prusa PCCF. We don't use the Prusa one, but these set the right values and it works fine when we print it. Yeah, so that's the other really strong one, and it also has more of a tendency to fail, but as long as you watch it and set up the settings correctly, it should probably print fine. I know some people in the team are also going to experiment with some other filaments, nylon or just plain PC. Those also would be stronger than just PLA, and for certain applications that might be better. I've not really used them, and for this video, a lot of the things are just like, I kind of learned the basics and how to 3D print, could 3D print stuff fast, could get pieces that worked. I'm not like super knowledgeable about all the different settings, but I'm just going to show you what I've done to make it work, and hopefully that will help you get started. So for this, let's just select PLA. I've changed the color. I'm just going to change it back. I like the orange color. Let me see if I can get nice orange. Oh, how do I save this? Oh, maybe I have to go like that. There we go. Select it. Close. Now my pieces are orange. Anyways, you don't have to worry about the color. It really doesn't matter. Okay. So now that the filament is selected, we can select the printer. So all of our Prusas in the robotics room are the MK3S or 3S Plus. I'm not sure which one exactly, but it's fine. They have the same settings. They don't, the MMU2, that's like multiple colors, multiple filaments. So just do the plain one. This is the printer you want to choose. Yep. And that looks good. Okay. So we selected the printer. I'm going to go over to this other tab now and talk about some of the other settings over here. So the settings you should know. So the layers and perimeters. So over here, the only setting I really ever change is this perimeters tab. The perimeters, I don't think they have any pictures, but I'll show you when we generate the G code. The perimeters are like how many outside layers or inside layers for any like geometry. Like if you have a circle, like how many outside layers of the circle it will make before it starts just doing the infill pattern. So the 3D print always has like an outside layer that's all smooth, and then the inside's like some percentage infill, and it fills that much filament with the inside. I think this can be like thought about like as the walls of the print. I don't know if there's another setting for walls, but the perimeter is the same thing. So like for like pulleys or something for gears, you know, those outside layers are contacting each other always, and that's what's actually working, moving fast, like grinding against each other. So those you'd want a lot of perimeters. You don't want the outside layers to be weak. So I usually set them to 4 for something like a pulley. So like this pulley right here, I would probably use 4. I've seen people do higher. Maybe lower is fine, but 4 has worked fine for me. And that's all you really have to choose at this page. One thing I will say is to get some of these settings, you're gonna have to like go to export mode. If you're only at simple, it will only show you some of them, and that won't allow you to edit everything. So expert probably is more than you need. I think advanced is to like see some of the support settings, you have to go to advanced. But yeah, that's all for this tab. A lot of the main tabs we change are layers, perimeters, infill, and the support material. Everything else as I've never had to change. So for the infill, so again, for both you want higher layers and stuff for parts that are getting used or have a lot of stress on them, right? And then also you probably want a high infill, make it a really solid and dense piece. I usually only go max infill of like 50, and like that's like as much as you really need. I don't know. I've seen people go like closer to 100, but 50 seems to have all the strength for almost all things. And like something like a pulley, which is getting a lot of use, or those any piece, like really like 30 is probably fine for a pulley or a hub. You kind of need to see, like maybe you're leaving the print overnight and you just have a little extra time, you want to make sure it doesn't break, you can raise that value. If you need the piece soon and it's like you want to adjust the time to make sure you can get it in time, that's infill is one of the big things you can adjust. I'm going to set the infill at 30. Seems like a pretty reasonable value to me. And then the other thing you might want to adjust is the infill pattern. So I think it's default grid. The stronger infills are 3D infill. So grid is just going to be a two-dimensional infill, just all the way up. A stronger infill would actually be like a three-dimensional infill. I think the strongest being 3D honeycomb. At least that's the one that I've used. Gyroid is also a three-dimensional infill, and I think it's a little faster. So the different infill types have different speeds. I think the grid is maybe the fastest, but the gyroid also is pretty fast, and it's three-dimensional. So this is probably what I would use in this case. Okay. So this is a tab we don't have to really change. And then all of these settings over here, these have been set by when you selected your printer and filament type. So you don't really need to worry about them. But the other thing you might want to edit is your supports. So I think it'll automatically be generate supports off. So if you want supports, you can turn it on and then select the type. The two that you can use, that I would use, are grid and organic. So maybe I can show in a little bit when we actually slice the piece what the two different types look like. What you should know is grid prints a little faster, but it's a little harder to remove. It can be harder to remove, especially in some geometries. Organic's usually easier to move, but it does take a little more time. Also, organic also looks really cool. So if you want to have cool prints, that's what you want to use. I'm going to leave supports. It's fine to leave on. We can edit it on this page also. So right now support's on everywhere. So let me just, yeah. So you have four options here. You have no supports, supports on build plate only, which means that all the supports will be based on the build plate and then just touch the pieces, the areas they need support. If you have supports everywhere, the supports can build off of your own 3D printed part. And that's usually fine. I mean, they're not attached very securely. They're easy to remove. So that's fine. But if you don't need it, like, it's even easier if you just have them on the build plate. And what I'm actually going to do, something that I've more recently started using and experimenting with, is this for support and for forcers only. And this is when you kind of can tell the slicer where you want the supports. So in this case, to do that, you need to select the piece, and then there's this paint on supports where you can actually put supports on this piece. And let me just quickly talk a little bit about what actually needs to be supported. Any overhangs should probably be supported, as long as they're not, some overhangs are small enough that it doesn't really matter. So for this piece right here, For For this piece right here, I would, you see this like in, moving the piece, okay. This inside, like, oh, this inside face right here, that's something that, I don't know, it probably doesn't need a support, but I'm just going to put a support there for this time. The other parts that would automatically generate supports if I had supports on would be this this downward face of the pulley flange, and then also in these holes. But these geometries are honestly small enough that, because maybe we can look at it also when I slice it, but because there's not a big gap and it kind of works its way slowly closed, like, supports aren't actually like necessary to have a successful print. So when I'm going to paint on supports, I'm just going to paint them on here in this thing, and maybe a couple on the edge. But the edge also, it might like have a little bit of loose filament, but usually you can save a lot of time without doing supports, and it's something that's way easier to clean up and probably takes less time than actually removing all the supports. So let's paint on, let me do this. Select the piece, paint on supports, and just, you can just paint on the inside here. Oh, it's kind of weird to paint it in there, but that's fine. That is probably good, and then I'll maybe do a couple dots around. I don't know. I've actually just started experimenting with this, so I'm having a little fun over here. I don't really know what's necessary, but all right, we have some dots. Whatever. Okay. So with that on, this is what will give supports. And then for the camera mount, when you actually do want full supports, so sometimes if you don't want supports for this piece, but you want supports for another piece, you can actually turn on supports just for one piece. So what you could do for the camera also is, you see it has these lists of all the parts here. If you right click and then, I've not done this in a little bit. I think there's, reload scale to print volume. Is there more stuff here? If you go down, you can hit support material, and then I think that will generate supports. We'll see when we slice it. So I think we're ready to slice now. I'm gonna, here are the generate support materials, interface, this, rectilinear. I'm just gonna, yeah, let's slice it and see what happens. And I'm not sure exactly. Usually you don't mess with it this much. Okay, so in that case, it didn't actually generate any support material. Probably because supports was turned on to enforcers only. But in this case, so like, yeah, there's some parts that definitely need supports there. Well, let's just look a little bit at what's happening here, then we can adjust it to turn on the supports correctly. Okay, so the first thing I just want to point out is you can see we have the 4 perimeters, the outside one, and then 3 on the inside. There's the yellow lines, and then we have these faces. When you slice the file, it will tell you the print time. So with these settings, this is saying that it will print for 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That'll be really fast. 7 hours, and then you can also see the breakdown of like the perimeter takes basically 2 hours. Infill is 3 hours, and you can see that breakdown. If I was just printing this piece alone, I'd probably do less perimeters, maybe a little lower infill. And I think he might honestly be able to adjust for pieces specifically. Like here, maybe I can adjust layers and perimeters for this piece be less. Let's slice it again and see what happens. Does that work? It looks like it's still 4 perimeters. I'm not sure. Anyways, it's not a big deal. 7 hours might seem like a lot, but it's kind of reasonable for a print like this, especially when these are pretty high infill. Like when I was printing whatever 6 of these together, it would probably be like a 18-hour or longer print. So definitely beefy prints. You also, so there's these 2 things, and this will show, so at each layer it's showing the printing actions, and then this will show from the different heights. So let's go inside and look at some of this. So when you go like this, you can see the infill pattern, three-dimensional infill. You can see infill compared to perimeters, and that looks pretty good. You don't really have to do this. It's kind of cool to look at with the layers, and then you can also scroll this back to see the pattern it takes to print stuff. But I don't usually have to check stuff here, just if you want to look at how it's actually doing its job. That's kind of cool to look at. Yeah, so let me figure out what's happening with the supports here. And we can hopefully get something working. I might just turn on, if I go like, if I do supports everywhere, can I turn off supports maybe? I do not auto-generate supports, but then this has auto, let's see what happens there. I'm just messing around, this is my first time. That doesn't work. Support material. Oh, I didn't turn on auto-generated. Okay, that should now work. Great. Let me also go to full screen. Whoops. Okay, so now this has its special supports, and this has supports everywhere. So this is the grid pattern, and you'll see here, let's look at the time. Support material, 49 minutes. So that's pretty fast, but it also kind of fills all the space, and it can be hard to take off. Like you see all this material and all the points it's touching. So what you might want to do is you might want to go to organic supports, which are kind of cool. Let's slice it again and take a look at, there they are. So they're still very close, but they'll be much easier to remove. There's much less material that's actually touching. And here, you know, it's just a little bit, this piece right here, easy to take off. They're usually easier to remove, but you see that they are a little bit longer, and when you have more support material for bigger pieces or more pieces, that can add up, that time can add up. So the main way, if the supports have been kind of confusing, I'm sorry, I was just trying to show you all the different special ways if you ever want to do some special stuff. But the main way you want to do supports, just turn them on here, give supports to all pieces, and don't really worry about doing any special cases. The brush on supports, paint on supports, and the custom support per pieces are more... Oh, this is my problem. I tried to hit perimeters, but those are, you're not going to use them very often, but maybe at some point when you're like, oh, maybe I need to use that, you can know how to do it. So let's do that. If we want that piece to be less perimeters, so you can have kind of different settings for different pieces, and that should probably, well, now with supports, their time's longer, but I believe the perimeters have went down significantly. The infill will increase, but probably not at an equal rate. Okay, so that seems pretty good, and we'd be ready to export that to the printer now. So to export it, you can, so this export G code right here will download it to your computer. And because I have this on my home computer, what I do when I make a G code at home is I just download it, send the email to myself with the file on it, and then I can download it on whatever, log into my email, download it from there. But if you make the G code on the computer that's in the shop and it has the SD card reader, you just take an SD card, plug it into the computer, and then there'll be another little tab that pops up here in the corner, right where my mouse is. And if you click that, it will automatically download the file to the SD card, and you'll be good to go. Some of the computers don't read the SD cards, and some computers don't have Prusa Slicer, so you kind of have to find a computer you like. My personal favorite computer, love the computer, Computer 17. I used it for all my time on the robotics team. Great computer. Everything works on it. As far last time, hopefully nobody breaks it, because that'll be very sad. But it reads SD cards, has Prusa Slicer, also has Fusion 360. Okay, so yeah, you download it to the SD card, and that's after you do that, you take the SD card out, you're done with the computer, and you go over to the printer. So on the printer, to import it in is really easy. You just plug the SD card in, and then there'll be I think it'll automatically open the SD card, and you can click the file you want. The most recently downloaded file will be the first file, so that's the one you can always choose. Also, if you need to go to settings, you can go to settings, and to go back to the printer file, it's just like print from SD card. It's one of the options, and if you just click on that, it's easy to you go back to the menu if you just click on print from SD. But there are a couple other things you have to do before you start printing on the printer. If you might need to change filament or put a filament in. So there's also two options. There's unload filament and load filament. So unload filament just requires you to select what type of filament it is. It will heat it up, make a little sound. You can push the button and it will eject the filament. And one thing I should say is to do this, of course, is heating up this nozzle that's on the printer to very high. It's like 200 something. You probably can find the setting here, how high, what the heat, how hot it is. So don't touch the nozzle. The nozzle is very hot. If you ever need like unclog it or something, maybe you can get like some little metal bowl or something to do it, but you don't touch it with your hand. It's hot, and you don't want to burn yourself. So to unload it, you just hit unload. It will heat up. It will tell you when it's ready, and then you push the little dial again, and it will eject it. And then to load it in, you probably won't do it right away because the nozzle's still hot. You just hit load, and then you insert it in, and it will start trying to take it in. One thing you should know is sometimes when you eject it, it kind of gets a little like the diameter of the filament gets a little larger. It gets a little bulb at the end, and that can make it really hard to load the filament in, and it gets stuck. So you might want to just cut off the end if it looks like that, and then to the end is all nice and clean. So then you can just put it into the extruder when you're loading it in, and it will just start extruding the color. And then it will also have, after some time's passed, it will give you a screen. It's like, is this the color you want to extrude? So if the color doesn't really matter. It will clear out the color pretty soon. If it's like a little bit black, if you're trying to switch to red and it's probably fine. The main thing is you want to make sure that there is actual filament extruding out, and there's some filament spiraling at the bottom. So if that looks good, you can hit yes, you're good. If you still need to, if nothing's coming out, or it's really the wrong color, you can hit no, and then it will keep extruding out. That's how you change filament. So the other thing you need to change, or maybe need to change, kind of depends what you're doing, is the print bed. So we have a couple different types of print beds. The main one you'll probably use is the like smooth PEI sheet, and that is maybe I can just look it up, show the picture, but that's I'm all over the place over here. It will look like this, and this is great for PLA. It's super easy to take prints off of. It's really easy to use. Yeah, but if you're using PTG or like PC or something, those can get really stuck to this and mess up this type of print bed. So you're going to want to use this like powder coated or satin finish steel sheets. We have a couple different ones. I think we have a satin one and a powder coated one. Let's see, what's this? I don't know. Anyways, you'd want to use one of these. It has a little bit of a texture, and you want to make sure you might have to change the height a little bit to make sure it's printing correctly. But those are the two sheets you want to use. And then before you start the print, you always need to just take some isopropyl alcohol and wipe down the print bed. That will clean it off and make you really want the first layer to stick really well to the print bed. So you should clean off every time. So that's easy for both of these. Just take some isopropyl alcohol, a little napkin, and just clean them off. Okay, so choosing the print bed, and then the last thing you might need to do is then you click load the print, start the print. It will maybe check the 0 on the height. It will do that all automatically, and then it does a first line in this area right here. Let me pull it. Yeah, this area right here, and you can even see it in the Prusa Slicer. It will do this first line kind of just to clear out any junk on the nozzle, and then it will go around and do this this like line around where it's going to print, and then it's going to start printing the actual pieces. So the first layer of the prints is always the most important because that's how it attaches to the bed, and also it's where it's most likely to have a failure. If it fails on the first print, first layer is definitely going to fail later on. So you should always make sure that the first layer goes well. The biggest thing you're looking for is the adhesion to the print bed, which is controlled by how the Z height from the Z height to the bed. So what you're looking for is this like in between value. So you don't want it to be too high. If it's too high, it's not going to be like it's going to be like has gaps in between, and it looks just like a round filament. What you want to do is slightly squish. So you do want to see kind of squished together, making a nice surface. And then you can also be too low, which is when it's like too squished together, and on the edges it starts like kind of pushing up. It kind of starts pushing up on the edges. So you want this in between value of good. There's some tolerance here, but you do want this in between value. And when you're printing, there's a live adjust feature. So if it's ever too high, you can always live adjust Z. If you just like, I think if you just hit the button, it will pop up. It's pretty easy to find, and you can just control it, and that will change the Z height. So if it ever looks too high or too low, you can change it. It's a little hard to see when it's printing how high it is, but you can kind of look in and see. And if you really need to, you can pause the print and just look at it and then adjust it. But you do want this in between value, and then after the first layer is done, it looks good, you'll probably be fine. Yeah. You're good to go. Come back in whatever time it tells you, 8 hours, and you'll have your pieces done. Exciting. Well, that's all I have to say about this. Again, this is just what I would think is kind of like the minimum to do a good job printing stuff. I didn't do a lot of research. If you ever want to look something up, there's plenty of resources online. Prusa has great resources, but there's also other people that have a lot of resources, videos. So if you ever have questions, you should either go online or ask somebody else that has a lot of experience. All right. Thank you.